Let Bions Be Bygones presents a cyber-noir story about a retired detective named John Cooper in a beautiful display of pixels and raindrops. In the lowest and most dangerous parts of the dystopian city planet Terrahive, an upper-class girl goes missing. How could he possibly resist this case? This game is all about making choices, carving your path, and becoming the kind of detective you've always wanted to be. There are no wrong choices here, only consequences. Choose a logical, scientific approach, ruthlessly muscle through with your gun, empathetically connect to people, or cynically do what needs to be done. And the story that we choose to create for ourselves, how we decide to act and what we do, will grow our character, giving him different motives and flashbacks, and make, break, and influence our relationship with other characters. Let Bions Be Bygones is a point-and-click game with a big focus on dialogue, and it'll be fully voice-acted. That's a really good thing, for me at least, because I often find myself getting distracted or losing interest in text-based games that don't have voiceovers. The game promises to be a fresh take on the genre, with character building, puzzles, and inventory now blended into the narrative. I'm not quite sure what this means. I guess we'll have to just play the game to find out, but it definitely seems like a lot of thought has gone into these systems to make them actually fit into the world and story in some way. It's also been noted that the focus of the game has been moved from the boring puzzles and pixel hunts of the past to a strong narrative and rich world with many choices and different approaches. There's a small what to expect section on Steam, which includes 20 plus unique locations to explore, 50 plus characters to meet, 20 plus side hustles to deepen the lore, 20 plus hours in a single gameplay, 100 plus Steam achievements, 1,000 plus choices, and 5 plus different endings with endless variations depending on choices. Now, that was a lot of numbers, but I want to focus on the first one, 20 plus unique locations to explore, because we have seen a couple sneak peeks into different places throughout the game. Also note that some of these clips I'm showing you are a few years old at this point, so pretty much everything here is subject to change. First is the actual planet that the game takes place on. John Cooper, the detective himself, has a few words to say about that. Welcome to the planet Terrahive. A planet that never should have existed, completely encrusted in a disease called humanity. Corporate arcologies and space elevators shadow the layers of polluted man-made edifices, overseen by ancient brains on apparatuses and driven by greed, corruption, progress, and immortality. And the first stop on our tour is the lovely Preludium, the seedy underbelly of the infamous Inferno nightclub where retired Bions reside. And we know from this shot that Bions are a sort of android or robot that you can upload your consciousness into before your physical human body dies. Not necessarily a place I'd want to live, but it's still kind of pretty in its own way. Nearby, I'd imagine, is this metro station in the slums. Cooper comes here as part of his investigation. I'm curious to see if there are other stations we can visit in the game, and if we can actually ride the train from one part of the city to another. Next, we have the Pit. Not long ago, gangs would pave the streets in blood on a weekly basis. Today, it's just a different level of hell, catering to the upper's sick fantasies of sex, drugs, and bad music. So this seems to be a spot in the lower part of the city where the wealthy come to do their dirty work off the books. These apartments house a large number of the population, or as Cooper puts it, these residential concrete monsters have only one purpose: to leash as many minds as possible with the horror of their sheer numbers. And of course, these people have jobs, so here's a look at some of the shops in the market hub area in the game. In this same location is a preview of what a conversation with an NPC could look like. And I love all the cinematic zooms. It perfectly fits with this futuristic detective theme. Over the top and dramatic. Okay, now we're getting into some very old territory. This clip comes from a public Patreon post from May 2020, so again, all of this could be completely different by now. But even if it is, I still think it gives us a good look into what the devs are envisioning for the game. In this character creation menu, the main character was named Booker instead of Cooper. But here's a look at a simplified RPG system which lets players have some choice in how their character turns out without going fully customizable. And that actually was the plan at the start. to let players create their own detective from scratch. But this turned out to be too much work without actually adding much to the game. And that's also where this low-res pixel style comes in. Let Bions Be Bygones went through many different concept phases, from full 3D models, high-res 2D comic-style drawings, to higher-res pixel art. But none of it felt quite right. This low-res pixel style ended up being the perfect solution to this customization problem. Enough detail to spark your imagination, but enough space to leave it to the player's creativity. The Patreon post went on to compare it to reading a book. You'll have a mental picture of a particular person you're reading about, but the other reader will have a whole different one. But back to those character stats. These 3 abilities, physical, intellectual, and cognitive, will act as thresholds and requirements for different scenarios. If you want to punch someone, the outcome of the punch will be determined by your body score. But if you find a dead body, the forensics analysis action will be disabled if your intelligence score is too low. The inventory will work in a similar way. You won't have to open it and try to use every single object with every possible spot in the world. It'll merely add bonuses, or let you do some actions that you otherwise couldn't. And that's just about everything there is to know about Let Bions Be Bygones. The game doesn't have a release date yet, but I'll be sure to update you once we get some more news. And before I let you go, I do want to point out a couple other games you might be interested in if you liked this video. First is the newly released Shadows of Doubt. This one's still in early access, and I've only played the demo for it, but it's kind of like a detective game turned up to the max. How you approach pretty much everything in the game is entirely up to you. Described as an immersive sandbox stealth game, everyone in the city has their own fully simulated life, making for some interesting scenarios to uncover. Also, the dark and gloomy voxel graphics here are amazing. And the other game I'd like to recommend is Replaced. A lot of you probably already know about this one. It's supposed to come out sometime this year, and it's a retro-futuristic action platformer. There's corruption, there's combat, there's tons of dystopian stuff, and I just happen to have a full-length video on it.